Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Z-Cast. And today, it is Friday, August 15th, 2025. We are officially continuing our countdown until NFL kickoff. Now, it's pretty crazy. We are already almost halfway through August, which is pretty insane to me. Obviously, we got week 2 with the preseason kicking off tonight, I believe. Got 2 games tonight. So anyway, guys, today's video will be featured on the Detroit Lions, coming off a historical season in 2024. They finished 2024 with a 15-2 record, and that was good enough for the number 1 seed and a first-round bye in the NFC playoffs last year. Now, of course, for the Lions, that ended up not being the case. That ended up not being such a good case for them because that meant they had to face the red-hot Washington Commanders, led by rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels, coming off an upset win down in Tampa Bay. And he led the Commanders straight into Ford Field, and they upset the Lions 38-28, I believe. Might have the score wrong on that game, but of course the Lions obviously got upset by a red-hot Commanders team. But that is not to take away from last season. We did see a historical season from this Detroit Lions team. Of course, led by quarterback Jared Goff, headlined the team with 37 passing touchdowns. And last season, we did see Jared Goff form an elite connection with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who did finish with a career season, had over 1,000 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. A great year for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And for Lions fans, it was great to see Jared Goff form that great chemistry and awesome connection there with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And last season, the Lions also had one of the best running back duos in the entire NFL. Of course, you all know him as Sonic and Knuckles. We're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I don't know which is which. I'd consider probably Montgomery Knuckles and Gibbs Sonic, if I'm guessing off the top of my head. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not really too big into Sonic. I was, but not as much. Anyway, got Jahmyr Gibbs. He had 16 touchdowns last year, which is pretty impressive for any running back. Of course, he's a great receiver as well. Now, the Lions obviously had a historical season. So unfortunately for them, that means they did end up losing both of their coordinators. Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, he got hired by their division rival Chicago Bears. I'm sorry, that's got to sting, Lions fans. And Aaron Glenn, one of my personal favorite guys, of course, his name's legendary. Aaron Glenn was hired, their defensive coordinator was hired by the New York Jets to be their new head coach. So now the Lions, heading into 2025, will have to replace both, again, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Now, that is very hard to do. As we all know, remember in 2023, when the Eagles lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, they lost both Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen. And, of course, the year after that, the Eagles struggled very much, and they actually had to replace their coordinator twice. So they went through 3 coordinators trying to replace Shane Steichen, who ended up going to the Colts. So, of course, every time you see 2 coordinators leave, it's obviously very scary. Not scary, but it's obviously, tough because you got to replace them. But for the good news for the Lions is they really did not lose any players, and they are expected to get their star edge rusher back, Aiden Hutchinson, who was certainly on pace to have a great season and possibly win Defensive Player of the Year last season before he suffered that gruesome knee injury against the Cowboys. And the Lions, they did have a relatively quiet offseason in terms of signing players, but again, they really didn't lose anybody. Of course, he still got Sonic and Knuckles, but they did sign one of my biggest signings I like. They signed free agent DJ Reed from the Jets, who I think is a great cornerback. He's going to replace Carlton Davis, who signed with the Patriots. And yeah, they had a pretty solid draft. They did draft a guy I'm a big fan of from Ohio State in the first round. Got big defensive tackle, Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State at pick 28. Definitely a big boy. Going to definitely help their run defense. And again, they really did not lose anybody on defense. So I expect them to have a pretty strong defense again this season. Of course, they're one of the best divisions in football in the NFC North. They also have a pretty explosive offense. They also obviously have one of the better tight ends in the NFL, Sam Laporta. I think he's entering year 3. And they also have a guy I mentioned before, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Another guy I really like is Jameson Williams. Really fast receiver. They like to get him the ball. Kind of screens and jet sweeps. He's very explosive with the ball in his hands. He's somebody that can flip the field for you, go deep, take one to the house, return punts, kickoffs, a very talented guy. And they also re-signed Tim Patrick, a very tall wide receiver who I think will kind of complement Amon-Ra St. Brown, as well as having the little guy, Khalif Raymond, who's also a really good punt returner as well. Now, also, the Lions did not lose very many players, so I do expect them to be the same explosiveness. It's just I don't expect them to be as probably as scoring as many points. And again, when you lose a guy like Ben Johnson, who, of course, half the league was trying to hire this guy, I just don't see the offense being as productive. Of course, you still have the same guys, So it's not going to be too different, but I just expect it to maybe not be as smooth as it has been the last couple of years. Because you guys remember, Ben Johnson had been there for about 4 or 5 seasons, I believe. So he had a lot of time to kind of get familiar with Jared Goff and sort of build that chemistry up from the ground up. As we all remember, about a couple of years ago, the Lions were pretty bad, like in 2020. So when Dan Campbell got there, it really sort of turned things around with Ben Johnson. Oh, yeah. So also, again, they have one of the better offensive lines in the entire NFL, led by one of my favorite players in the NFL, Penei Sewell, big boy Penei Sewell, right tackle, probably one of the best right tackles in the NFL. And yeah, so the Lions this season, of course, as mentioned before, they do play in one of the toughest divisions in the entire NFL. That is the NFC North, almost said West, NFC North. And they start the season week 1 at the Green Bay Packers, which is a very tough way to start your season. Of course, they are very familiar with each other. These teams have formed quite the rivalry over the last couple of years. So, yeah, and they play week 2. Their home opener is home against none other than their former guy, Ben Johnson, leads his team in there to Detroit to try to take down his old team. That should be interesting for the Lions. So, for the Detroit Lions, I do have them going this season. Not as good as last year. Again, last year they were 15-2. I have them finishing the season 11-6. That is good for second place in the NFC West, NFC North. And I do have them, of course, making the playoffs, obviously. Now, guys, of course, that's going to do it for today's video on the Lions. I appreciate you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe. And tonight, got the Baltimore Orioles. After coming off taking 2 out of 3 from the red-hot Seattle Mariners, will be heading to Houston to take on the Houston Astros. Of course, now the O's are out of it, but now we are looking to be spoilers for some of these teams that are fighting for the wild card. So if the O's can steal some games from these good teams, I'd love to see that. Of course, tonight you got Brandon Young going up against Framber Valdez, one of the best pitchers in baseball. He will be a free agent next season. He's somebody I'd like to see the O's go after, Mike Elias. Dylan Cease or Framber Valdez, Mike Elias. One of those two guys, please. And as mentioned before, my Baltimore Ravens will also be playing in Texas tomorrow night. We'll be playing at the Dallas Cowboys. And we are not expected to see any starters. And one more thing on the Ravens, as I heard, my inside sources were telling me, keep an eye out for a Kyle Hamilton extension. I've heard from my sources that Eric DeCosta and Steven Biscotti have been talking with Hamilton at practice. You know what that means. They're discussing contracts. So be on the lookout for that. The next highest paid safety will be Kyle Hamilton. I expect that in the next couple of weeks, possibly a couple of days, but certainly keep an eye on that. So, guys, again, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. And this has been the Z Cast. Thank you, guys. Let's go, Ravens.